Hey guys, Trey here. Another forecasting video today. We have an enhanced risk for parts of southeast Nebraska and northeast Kansas, surrounded by a slight risk that goes into eastern Kansas, northwest Missouri, southwest Iowa, and up into eastern Nebraska. We also have a slight risk for the Illinois-Indiana corridor down into western Kentucky, western Tennessee, for the remnants of Tropical Storm Cristobal. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. We're going to focus mainly on this severe threat here in the Central Plains, as that it looks to be potentially the most robust severe threat today. We do have a 10% tornado threat out there. Both areas also with a 5%, larger 5%, and then a wind threat and a large hail threat accompanies the enhanced risk in Nebraska and Kansas. 30% hatched. Significant hail threat there. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's our satellite picture. You can see clearly the remnants of Tropical Storm Cristobal there, moving up into Missouri and Illinois. That should move to the north, continue to move to the north throughout the day. And in the northeast quadrant of that, sort of now upper low, that's been kind of absorbed by the trough that has spawned our severe weather threats the last couple days up in the Dakotas. It's kind of going to merge together kind of as one here over the next day or so. But as this moves north in the exit region of that sort of broad low now will be the greatest tornado threat. So up here in Illinois and Indiana, I would suspect that would be your greatest tornado threat today. We'll take a look at that more closely in a second. Out here in Nebraska, Kansas, you see quite a bit of cloud cover there. With some ongoing, looks like some thunderstorm activity. We'll go ahead and zoom into the Central Plains sector here. And we do see some shower and storm activity here in northeast Nebraska, with some cloud cover encroaching on the area from the west. This is kind of behind our surface low here. It's very cool out here. We'll take a look at the surface data now. And you can see temperatures in the 50s back here into western Kansas, into the 40s up here in extreme western Nebraska. So some very cold air behind this cold front here associated with this surface low. You can see the cyclonic flow here up in northwest or west central Kansas there, just west of the Russell area. That's where our surface low is centered, with very strong winds on the backside. Look at this. Very strong winds on the backside. Have heard reports of gusts into the 50s and 60s here out in southwest Nebraska, western Kansas, and down into the Texas Panhandle and western Oklahoma. There are high wind warnings in effect for these areas. Very strong, very well-defined cold front out here with this surface low. Out in Illinois and Indiana, we'll take a look at that. So here's Illinois, here's Indiana. We see a very juicy air mass out here ahead of this sort of upper low that was Tropical Storm Cristobal. 85 over 68 here, just east of the Illinois-Indiana border. Dew points in the upper 60s into the 70s down here in southern Illinois. Dew point spreads are very small down here, so expect lots of low cloud cover out there. Any breaks in the sunshine are going to be important up in this region today for supercells to get going. These will most likely be of the mini supercell variety. Very tropical, sort of warm core kind of environment out here. But if we can get some heating, some destabilization, it's already 80-85 degrees here in western Indiana. So already very warm out there, very juicy air mass. So it's not going to take a lot to get those kind of mini supercells going. Let's take a look at our Mezzo Analysis. Here's our surface chart. You can see two sort of low centers within kind of this broader cyclonic flow in the Central Plains going into the Midwest here. You see the remnants of Cristobal here. Very tight, compact surface low in eastern Missouri right now. Then we have our secondary sort of center that formed due to cyclogenesis processes yesterday and yesterday evening in eastern Colorado. That's since moved to the east. 996 millibar low, very well defined out there. That should move to the northeast, should inch to the northeast, east-northeast today, into the northeast Kansas vicinity, the Kansas-Nebraska border vicinity, and the remnants of Cristobal will continue to move north And so very well-defined surface lows out here for these two distinct setups. If we go to our upper air chart, we can see very strong upper low here, centered over Colorado right now, with a what looks like 65-ish knot jet streak here rounding the base of that trough. Very well-defined, very compact upper low here, upper trough, that will provide our focus, our synoptic scale focus for severe weather today in the Kansas-Nebraska vicinity, right in that exit region. Beautiful divergence later on today. You can see those winds spreading out over northeast Kansas and eastern Nebraska right there. Beautiful divergence in that exit region. Out here we see kind of a closed contour, a little less well-defined, but a closed contour up here aloft, signifying some sort of closed low there over Missouri. That should continue to eject northward throughout the day with a 40 to 50 knot flow in Illinois and Indiana. So that belt of stronger winds aloft is going to be where our most significant tornado threat is going to be focused today. 700 millibar winds. You can see two distinct circulation centers as well. Let's go ahead and zoom into our Central Plains sector. And we actually capture both of these on this sector, so that's perfect. Here's our main shortwave here, located over the Texas Panhandle. That should move to the east throughout the day, and that should help enhance our flow in the mid-levels as the day progresses. The remnants of Cristobal, that continues to move north. You can see a lot of mid-level moisture associated with this circulation center here. And as such, lots of forcing, lots of showers already ongoing across Missouri, Iowa, western Illinois, and another separate pocket down here in western Tennessee into western Kentucky. Let's take a look at our 850s, low-level jets, and we see a very strong response on the backside of this surface low sort of feature, 50 to 60 knots up here in Nebraska, out of the northeast, all the way down into the Texas Panhandle, down into Oklahoma. We do have a separate sort of tongue of a low-level jet here extending into Kansas. That should kind of maintain the same sort of look throughout the day. Strong winds on the backside, not too much in the way of a low-level jet. But this, if you haven't noticed by now, this is pretty much a classic cold core setup in terms of where our features are located. We'll take a look at this paper by John Davies. He's an expert in cold core tornado forecasting, and this image on the left here is from his paper in 2006, kind of giving an overview of several cold core tornado case studies. And this is kind of the setup we're seeing today. We have our 500 millibar low and our surface low in fairly close proximity. That surface low located just to the east of our 500 millibar closed low aloft. Very cold temperatures aloft. If we look at our 500s here, we see temperatures, if we can see temperatures on this map, yeah, minus 17, minus 16 degrees Celsius. Of course, it's June, so this is kind of an unusual time of year, an unusual location for these kind of setups. So a little bit warmer air aloft associated with this, but it is June, so everything's kind of relative here. So very cold air aloft associated with this upper low. We have our surface warm front extending out to the east, and our cold front extending out down to the south from our surface low. That is definitely looking like the case here. We'll go back to our surface chart. Very well-defined cold front there. You can see the pressure tongue there going through southern Kansas into Oklahoma. And then our warm front kind of extends out this way. It's not sort of the classic scenario since we have this remnant tropical storm out here to the east, but we do see kind of a warm front out here extending to the northeast from that surface low. So at kind of the interface of where those two fronts kind of meet, right near the surface low, just east or northeast of the surface low is where we expect to see the most likely area for tornadoes, according to John Davies' work. Usually, though, you see dew points in the low to mid 50s with these kind of setups. Well, today we're seeing a much greater dew points than that. If we go back to our surface chart, we see we already have 60s and 70s dew points into our target area for today. So we have a lot more moisture to work with. So we could have the potential for a lot more robust supercell development out in this region today. You might say to yourself, well, the low-level jet's pretty weak. We would expect our shear to be weak, especially our low-level shear. Well, the thing about these cold core setups is that our low-level instability is key. These setups are more driven by thermodynamics than they are kinematics, which would be your sort of wind shear. Because your storms happen so close to that surface low and so close in proximity to that 500 millibar trough, you're not really going to get just these massive sort of looping hodographs and ample low-level shear. You're going to have more subtle shear, but the thing is, our low-level instability is going to drive this. So you can see here's our vorticity and 0 to 3 kilometer cape map, our low-level instability chart. You see lots of surface vorticity associated with that surface low. But in 6 hours, this is our RAP Mezzo Analysis forecast from the SPC Mezzo Analysis, we see ample 0 to 3 kilometer cape building in, upwards of 100 to 125 joules per kilogram there. That is well more than adequate for tornadic supercells in these types of regimes. Anything over 50 joules per kilogram is usually considered adequate. So very strong low-level instability with this helps really stretch those parcels near the surface, that vorticity near the surface into the vertical, and really aids in tornadogenesis in these kind of setups. If we look, so that's kind of the overall setup for the plains here. We can look at our 3 cape for our remnants of Cristobal. Let me change the sector here real fast. And in these kind of setups, it's kind of similar. You want to see lots of low-level instability, lots of cape centered near in the lowest couple kilometers of the atmosphere, and we do see that today. Lots of 0 to 3 kilometer cape there, associated with our probably some broken clouds ahead of that, the remnants of Cristobal. You can see 150, 175 down there in southern Illinois. Very much more than adequate across most of the region there today. So we can look at also some soundings here from this morning. Here's our Omaha sounding. Very stout inversion, but it is very clear ahead of that bank of clouds there moving across Nebraska and northwest Kansas. So we should get some heating there today to sort of help break that cap. And once the forcing arrives and we get into that exit region of the 500 millibar trough, that should erode fairly quickly this afternoon. Pretty kind of a small moist layer there. It extends only up to almost 850 millibars there. So a little bit drier air aloft. We can see our photographs not really favorable for tornadoes at first glance. But again, these setups don't require a ton of low-level shear to get things going. But photographs are fairly long today already, so I would expect large hail to be a threat with these, which we don't often see in these kind of cold core setups. But we do have steep lapse rates aloft, and very cold air aloft. So would expect to see large hail, potentially significant hail, out of these updrafts today. But I think the main threat with these is going to be tornadoes. This is a classic cold core setup as far as where the features are located. Parameters, though, a little bit on the higher side. Higher dew points, so potential for more robust supercell development today. Let's go ahead and take a look at some models to see how our features progress today. So there's our upper trough going to eject into the plains today. There's the remnants of Cristobal. That plains trough continues to move to the east, and we see that kind of take on a negative tilt throughout the day. Just beautiful divergence there as we go into the early evening hours. Just you can see the fanning out of those winds in the exit region of that trough. That is prime severe weather, prime time what we like to see for severe weather right there. Would expect to see storms fire in that exit region there. So somewhere in northeast Kansas, southeast Nebraska. Then you have Cristobal there, the remnants of Cristobal there. They move to the north pretty quickly, but you have southerly 500 millibar flow across Illinois and Indiana up into the Great Lakes region. Our 850s, again, not going to be on the strong side with our plains system because we're going to be right up tucked underneath that surface low. So we're, again, driven more by thermodynamics here than we are kinematics and dynamics. But up here for our remnants of Cristobal, very stout 850 millibar low-level jet here, 50 to 60 knots up here into the Great Lakes region and the Midwest here. And then our surface features, how those progress throughout the day. There's our surface low centered in Kansas. That's going to move off to the east and northeast throughout the day. Would expect storms to fire just right ahead of that surface low. So right on the Kansas-Nebraska border down south of the Lincoln-Omaha areas would think would be a good place to start there today. Again, well-defined circulation there with the remnants of Cristobal there, southeast flow at the surface. So if we can get some sunshine in these areas, northern Illinois, northern Indiana, I would expect that to be the highest tornado potential there today with that ample low-level jet in that region. Here's our moisture. We'll focus on the Central Plains first, and you can see that moisture kind of wrap around that surface low. And right in this corridor here, this enhanced moisture is going to be where our storms are going to fire. We can take a couple soundings. 21Z, we'll take a sounding there right northeast of the surface low in that moisture contour, pooling area. And we see very high instability today, very high low-level instability. This sounding we just pulled, 0 to 3 kilometer cape of 215 joules per kilogram. That is off the charts for these kind of setups. Again, not a ton of turning in the low levels, but that's what we commonly see with these. We don't see photographs that are, your big-time synoptically driven tornado days with these cold core setups. We see, but the fact of the matter is, with this much low-level instability, any vorticity near the surface is going to be stretched very efficiently. So it doesn't take these massive clockwise turning photographs to get tornadoes in these kind of setups. You just have to have adequate turning in the low levels, adequate vorticity near the surface, and you are going to get that vorticity stretched into the vertical very efficiently by that low-level instability. We can take another sounding out here ahead of that, up in far northeast Kansas, just to see how things match up. And this is an error. Again, COD has been having some trouble with the sounding recently. We'll move on to 0Z. The storms will be ongoing at this point. Would expect storms to fire probably around 20Z, probably 2 to 3 p.m. today. And here is a little bit of a contaminated sounding. Let's see if we can get a non-contaminated sounding, a little more representative environment. And this is probably the best we're going to get. A little bit of contamination here, but probably fairly representative of the overall environment. Again, large instability, very large 3 cape, over 100 to 150 joules per kilogram. That is more than adequate. And lots of turning in the low levels here. It does increase throughout the day, so that'll be even more favorable for tornadoes with any discrete storms that fire. And usually these kind of this kind of setup produces more discrete storms. You don't really see squall line type complexes with these kind of cold core setups, and the reason for that is, if we take a look at our sort of initiating boundary, I guess you could call it this sort of cold front here, and if we look at our shear vectors, we are going to see that fairly orthogonal to that initiating boundary are our bulk shear vectors. So storms should be able to form on that boundary and stay isolated throughout the day as they move off of that boundary. So very favorable for a discrete storm mode today in the Central Plains target. We can now take a look at our Midwest target here. We can see our upper low moving to the north throughout the day. It's kind of going to devolve into an open wave according to the NAM here, but we do have adequate flow aloft here across Illinois and Indiana into the Great Lakes region. Our low-level jet is also going to be very strong, as we saw, 50 to 60 knots here across northeast Illinois, northwest Indiana, and then our dew points here are going to be very, very high here. It's a tropical system, so this is what we expect from a tropical system. We can take a couple soundings from that enhanced area of low-level jet, and just that's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing photographs here. This is what you'd expect to see with a tropical system like this. And the fact that we have 182 3 cape here 0 to 3 kilometer cape. Bodes well for tornadoes in this region. Very large looping hodographs, just due to that strong 850 millibar low-level jet. That's pretty textbook as far as a sort of tropical warm core type tornado setup goes. Lots of low-level instability, lots of clockwise turning in the hodograph. That bodes well for tornadoes. The only issue today is going to be cloud cover. Can we get enough clearing to get storms to form? And we see we do have some broken clouds here across Illinois and Indiana. The problem is this cloudiness associated with the remnants of Cristobal moving north into the region. So we're going to have to wait and see if we can maintain these cloud breaks up here. But if we do, it is definitely an environment for tornadoes, potentially some strong tornadoes. We'll see. But that is definitely a good-looking sort of sounding for this kind of tropical environment as far as tornadoes go. Last thing we'll look at here, some of the convective allowing model runs. This is the HRRR model. This is the 12Z run. We go forward in time, and we see about 19 to 20 Z. We get storm formation, storm initiation here in southeast Nebraska, and then we get a couple of supercells to fire down here right ahead of that surface low, almost right in the surface low, which is typical for these cold core setups. But very robust supercell development across the region today. Down there, that's why they have the Storm Prediction Center. It has that 10% area right there. These supercells, discrete storms, would have the highest tornado potential as they move off to the east and northeast in that area of enhanced moisture. As far as our Midwest target goes, let's see what it's progging, if it's progging any robust supercell development out there. And it's kind of hard to say. The models don't really handle these kind of tropical setups that well, so you're not going to see these large updraft helicity tracks with these kind of storms that the HRRR is progging. But any of these little sort of beans here could be a tornado producer, but not really showing robust supercell development out here across Illinois and Indiana. But any of these could be producing tornadoes. It doesn't take much in these setups to get tornadoes to go. You might see even just showers start to rotate without any lightning, and they'll be producing tornadoes. So we'll have to wait and see if that clearing can maintain up there. But the HRRR is showing the potential for storms up there, and they would likely produce tornadoes if they can acquire adequate rotation, and they probably will quickly given those photographs that we saw. Here is actually, let's go back to the HRRR real quick. 14Z run is our most recent run. We'll see if that's in. It's out 9 hours. We'll start with our Midwest target, and a little bit more favorable for storm formation here. These enhanced areas of reflectivity, again, are probably your mini supercells. Not going to be large helicity tracks associated with them. Those would definitely have the opportunity to produce tornadoes out here from probably the northeast quadrant of Illinois down into most of Indiana, and even into Ohio. We saw the other day Cristobal created some havoc in Florida, which was well to the east. Lots of tornadoes there, including the Orlando metro area. It was well to the east of the circulation. So this band out here could also, if this verifies, could also have tornado potential out there today. All right, the HRRR V4 is just coming in. This is our 14Z run. Actually, let's take a look. Forgot our Central Plains target with this latest HRRR run. And kind of more of the same. More discrete storm formation, about 21, 22Z. Those would be likely producing tornadoes. We can take a sounding out ahead of that. See what it looks like on the HRRR, and that's pretty good. It is contaminated a little bit, but large 3 cape, 160 joules per kilogram, with adequate curvature in the hodograph in the low levels. So that's going to easily be stretched into the vertical. We should get pretty efficient tornado genesis today with any discrete storms that form, with also a hail threat as well, given the steep lapse rates aloft. So here's the HRRR V4 real quick for our Central Plains target. It says much of the same, about 1920Z on this model, just to the just in the kind of Lincoln, Omaha vicinity, just southwest of there. They fire, then we kind of have a second round, kind of an arc of supercells here along the Kansas-Nebraska border. So very favorable setup here for tornadoes today across the Kansas-Nebraska border region down there. Midwest target real fast, and then I think we'll end the video here. Hervey 4 showing not really any robust storms, but any of these beans, again, any of these showers are going to have the ability to rotate with that much turning in the low-level wind profile out there today. So it's an interesting severe weather setup for sure today. Kind of a classic cold core setup with not really classic cold core parameters out there in the enhanced risk area, southeast Nebraska, southwest Kansas. It does look very favorable for a couple tornadoes out there today. And then out here in Illinois and Indiana, still in question, a little bit more conditional, I think, with given the clouds that are moving in, and destabilization is going to be key. We actually didn't take a look at any soundings out there. Let's take a look. This is Springfield, Illinois this morning, and that is a tropical setup if I've ever seen one. A very moist profile all the way up. But with any heating, you're going to get this sort of inversion to break here, and you'll get ample low-level instability to develop with lots of turning in the low levels you can see there in the wind profile. So a little bit more in question given the cloud cover out there, but it looks like a pretty classic sort of tropical warm core type setup up there today. So again, any shower, even any rain shower up there will be able to start rotating and produce tornadoes up there today. So if you're chasing today, stay safe. I'll be out today in the enhanced risk area. Very promising setup today. So if you're chasing today, good luck. Stay safe. I will see you under the mezzo. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.